Good evening and welcome to the San Bruno City Council meeting of November 27, 2012. I'd like to thank the Garden Club for the floral arrangement they always provide for our meetings. Roll call, please.
Councilmember O'Connell. Here. Vice Mayor Ibarra. Here. Mayor Gawain.
Here.
Councilmember Medina.
Here.
Councilmember Salazar.
Here.
Tammy Yuki, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3, announcements. There will not be a City Council meeting on the 4th Tuesday in December. The only regular City Council meeting in December will be held on December 11th, 2012. Presentations. There aren't any presentations this evening. Review of the agenda. Anyone want to? Okay. The agenda will stand as submitted. Approval of the minutes of the special City Council meeting of October 3rd and November 15th, 2012. Errors, changes, corrections, additions? Seeing none,
Mayor,
go. Carol?
I have some typos and word changes that don't really change the content of what the long minutes were from October 3rd, but I would like to add that.
All right. Someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes as
So moved.
Second.
motion second on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
The consent calendar, all items are considered routine or implemented earlier council action and may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless requested by a council member, citizen, or staff. Any action on the consent calendar?
Through the chair, I'd like to pull 7D.
7D.
D as in
Okay.
dog.
All right. Anything else?
Move to approve.
Second.
Move to approve the remainder of the consent calendar. All in favor?
Aye.
Item 7D, adopt a resolution accepting the on-call concrete repair and replacement contract as complete and authorizing release of the contract retention.
Mr. Mayor, I hate to do this, but it's the numbers just didn't agree with me on this, and I realized that this item is to approve the completion of the work for this project, but it just seems to me, and I got my highlighter out, and I got a big contingency on this project that was exceeded, even though the construction contract, the contractor came in lower than the bid. So what concerns me is that we set a construction contingency and it's exceeded. I just would like staff to probably explain that.
May I ask a clarifying question so that staff?
I've got a budget. I mean, it was very clear and laid out, clearly laid out in the staff report that this project had a budget of $329,000, of which the construction contingency was almost $55,000. The actual expenses came out to be $49,000 in construction management and inspection that was not in the budget, and then $7,600 in in-house design, which was not in the budget. So to me, that's, and that adds up, and I know it's not a lot, but it exceeds the contingency.
Through the chair, also on this, why staff's giving, I'd like to also, even though I asked for it, I'd like to have it for the record, is there was a change order for $23,000, and if we can explain as to what precipitated the change order for that amount.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Council Member. The budget was for construction. Typically in the construction budget or the contingency budget, the design and construction management and the inspection is not included. is the 23,000 construction change order was issued for two residents in the Crestmore neighborhood had to move in their residence prior the development and implementation of the sidewalk improvement in front of their property. And that's the reason why it was necessary to issue a change order to the existing concrete contractor available to us to implement those for a specific improvement and to enable those residents to move in. For this change order was above the contract amount, but was funded through the Crestmore Trust available funding.
Okay, I'm satisfied with the fact that as far as the explanation that the in-house staff design is not included in the construction. For a $274,000 project, it just seems very unusual to have $55,000 in construction management and inspection for sidewalk work. And I'm not a paving contractor. I'm not, I'm not an engineer or anything. But it just seems that, that it's a lot of money for something that would seem fairly routine in the field, in the pub, in the layman's eyes.
Typically, the management of the sidewalk contract is very labor intensive and required lots of time investment on staff part. Require lots of coordination with the specific property owners, and that's why is more resource intensive than a normal project.
Okay. I mean, that's what I need to hear. And I apologize because the internet was out. I was going to shoot you off
No problem.
a notice.
I hope I
before
was able to respond to your
Okay.
concern.
All right, thank you. I'll move to accept.
Second.
Motion second to accept item 7D of the consent calendar. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Item number 8, public hearings. We don't have any public hearings this evening. Item number 9, public comment on items not on the agenda. It's the council's policy to refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation and/or action where appropriate. The Brown Act prohibits the council from discussing or acting on any matter not agendized pursuant to state law. Would anyone like to address the council under public comment?
John Barrelier, North San Anselmo. This is the umpteenth time I've been here, and I hate to be a one-trick pony, but it has to do with, I noticed in the smiles, it has to do with firemen shopping on city time. I think it's dangerous. I think it puts the public in a vulnerable situation. Firemen have been heroic. They are heroic, and they will be heroic. I'm not commenting about that. I'm commenting about the process of their shopping when they might be better at the firehouse. I was imagining a scenario where a fire call came from across the street from the firehouse, and the men were down at Lucky Market, and this is strictly fictitious, and it goes something like this. Hello, hello, hello. You called me, how'd you get this number? I don't know. I'm knocking on your door, I'm across the street, my house is on fire. Well, I'm down at Lucky's, we'll be right up there. You're not here? You're not here? No, we're shopping, we're at the meat market, but we're coming. We're going to put the carts aside, and we're walking past the vegetables now. And now we're walking past the checkout stand. And now we're walking across the parking lot, and we're climbing into the car. Oh, we're on our way, we're on our way. You're not here, you're not here. We're going to make a right-hand turn. We're coming up past the cemetery, and now we're crossing 280. Oh, you're not here? I got a special rate on my fire insurance because I was within 1,000 feet of the firehouse. I'm within 200 feet. The fire is in the kitchen. It's going to the second floor. Oh, we're almost there. Well, you'll see me. I'm standing on my front lawn. I've got a cat that's either dead or unconscious at my feet. That wife is on my left. She's looking really mad. The guy on my right's my brother-in-law. He's carrying a briefcase. He's my lawyer. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else under public comment? All right, item number 10, conduct of business. 10A is appoint applicants to fill vacancies on commissions, boards, and committees. We just interviewed less than a half hour ago, and what's the pleasure of the council?
Through the chair,
Irene?
I'd like to make a motion that we reappoint all those members of all the boards and commissions that have reapplied, and as we do so, thank them for their services, including Jeffrey Tong with Bike and Ped, even though he did not get his application in exactly on time. He didn't have a legitimate excuse, and he did come tonight. And I know he's an enthusiastic member of the Bike and Ped Commission, so
I'll second
that's
that.
my first motion.
There's a motion and a second to reappoint all the members, including Mr. Jeffrey Tong, to Bike and Ped. On the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we do have 2 vacancies on the Citizens Crime Prevention Committee. Are there any nominees?
Through the chair,
Irene?
I'd like to nominate Matthew Sum.
Okay. Second on that? Anyone? We don't need that. Just to do a vote. Okay. Anyone else? There's 2 vacancies.
Through the chair,
Michael?
I'd like to nominate Mr. Tim Ross.
Tim Ross?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other nominees?
Through the chair, I'd like
Rico?
to go ahead and nominate Colleen.
Colleen Gerasimos?
Yep. Yes, please.
Okay. Any others? All right. All in favor of Colleen Gerasimos?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So Colleen's on. All in favor of Tim Ross?
Aye.
Okay. All in favor of Matthew Sum?
Aye.
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 Okay. Matthew Sum and Colleen Gerasimos are new members of the Citizens Crime Prevention Committee. And we do have one more committee, and that is
Traffic safety.
Traffic Safety.
Through the chair,
Rico?
I would like to nominate Tim Ross for Traffic Safety and Parking Committee.
Second.
Okay. Any other nominees? All right. All in favor of Tim Ross?
Aye.
Okay. Carol, we filled all of the commissions, boards, and committees. We're full. What is the one more?
That was Jeff Tong. Is that Tim Ross?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, would you, could we reconfirm for the Traffic Safety and Parking Committee, Tim Ross, for the Citizens Crime Prevention Committee, Matthew Sum and Colleen Geronimos,
Right.
and for the Bike and Ped Committee, I'm sorry, I think we missed that,
Oh, Jeffrey.
Jeffrey Tong.
Jeffrey Tong.
She included that in the reappointment, but
Great,
Jeffrey
okay.
Tong.
And then we still have vacancies on the Planning Commission.
We reappointed all
We
of those that
reappointed.
reapplied.
reappointed.
Great, okay, fine.
Okay. Okay, Carol? You're good? All right, item 10B, receive alternatives and provide direction to staff regarding the citywide current street sweeping program and related parking restrictions.
Good evening, Mayor, honorable council members. The City Council directed staff to review current street sweeping operations and related parking enforcement initiated by a resident concerned about why certain streets were subject to parking enforcement and why others were not. City Council requested that staff review if the current policy and related parking enforcement were still applicable today, and then meet with the Service Infrastructure Subcommittee to discuss alternatives. Staff discussed alternatives with the subcommittee in addition to discussing that street sweeping is required under the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Permit, NPDES permit. This is a county-wide permit that requires the need to remove debris and pollutants from the storm runoff before it drains to the bay. This permit is also part of a broader requirement that San Bruno, as well as other agencies, develop a trash load reduction plan with a goal of 40% by 2014. Public Services Director Clara Fabri is here to discuss the additional alternatives in more detail.
Considering the objectives of the street sweeping programs, 4 alternatives were developed for the infrastructure subcommittee and your consideration. The first alternative is to leave the parking restriction as it is right now. This alternative would not address the concern raised by the residents, and also will not require any additional cost to implement. Alternative 2 would extend the restriction citywide. This alternative would enable the city to enhance our effectiveness for the street sweeping, and also would further the city to achieve our trash reduction goal of 40% by 2014. This alternative would require additional resources by the police department, 2 person, 2.5 FTEs. Also, this alternative would require one additional investment of between $800,000 to $1.2 million to install parking restriction site citywide. The third alternative would be to extend the parking restriction to very specific location west of El Camino, where the streets are more narrow and lined with trees, and also is more congested by parked cars. This would be between El Camino to the east and Hazel and Cypress to the west, and Genevan to the north, and Santa Lucia to the south. This alternative would require, this alternative also would improve our street cleaning program, would enhance our street cleaning program, and also would further our objective to meet the trash load reduction. This alternative would require between $70,000, $90,000 investment for the cost of parking restriction signs. Based on police department assessment, they would be able to support this program with existing resources what they have. The fourth alternative, which is very responsive to the concern raised by the residents on the impact of the parking restriction on them, would modify the existing street sweeping program and would would delay the start of the street sweeping and the parking restriction in the residential area to 9 o'clock, and then in the same time would increase the frequency of street sweeping in the industrial and commercial area, achieving the goal of enhancing our street sweeping program and also to further the city in achieving our goal of trash load reduction. This alternative would require a around $24,000 investment to modify the existing parking restriction signs with changing the time, starting time in the residential area from the existing 8 o'clock to the proposed 9 o'clock. Gino Quinn, who developed actually this program, and the stormwater and street service manager is here, and he will be able to provide, he did the hard work, and he will be able to provide you with any detailed answer on the proposed changes to this program and to these alternatives. I am available, and Gino is available, and Tim is available for any additional question what you might have.
Okay. Any questions of staff? Irene?
Thank you. Is there a reason that we can't do 3 and 4? I mean, it seems logical to change the hours to accommodate people's work schedule and the things that we have learned from them about what makes it difficult, and extend the streets that we do sweep. I realize there's a cost involved, but we are going to have to step up what we do to comply with state laws. So was there thought in doing both, or?
And certainly here I would defer to the infrastructure subcommittee to share their discussion with you also. Was my understanding that the context how this was, all of these alternatives were discussed even with the subcommittee, you can use a phased-in approach that right now is in a very short time, alternative 4 could be implemented, and then alternative 3 can be, will take some time until public outreach, more extensive public outreach will be implemented for implementation of number 3, and also maybe some pilot project before the full implementation of alternative 3 could be considered. And then that would be the next step for the program, and was also discussed by the subcommittee as a long-term goal then to implement number 2 to extend citywide. That basically you can consider this as a step phased in kind of program modification. It's really everything is possible, is up to your decision and opinion at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Ken?
I just want to add that what we're clear on is that we have a concern with making sure we clean the streets in the flat areas. Okay, and if we don't have parking restrictions, then that street sweeper will basically just clean the middle of the street. Now, there's always been a concern, as long as I've lived in this city, on why doesn't the west side have streets, have parking restrictions. And so now that we have clarified the reasons why it has been implemented on the east side, that staff has found that we have similar situations on the west side. And that was presented to the subcommittee. and there's that, I guess, 8 square block area on the southwest side of the city. Now that I don't have, restricted parking, and I feel for the people, the residents that live on the east side, because, they have to be aware of what's going on, or else they're going to get ticketed. I mean, 400 to 500 citations per month is a lot of citations for our residents, and it's something that has, if we're going to have restrictions, we have to have that. So our concern is that even though we have found out that the west side has a needed area for street sweeping, we need to implement some major education to those residents, and let them know, or else they're all going to get ticketed, because I think it has to evolve into a mindset of, okay, this is the day, just like when you put your garbage out, that you have, that this is when you have to move your car, or you have to make sure your car isn't on the street. So, but I think we let the cat out of the bag. There is a reason for us to put it on the west side. So there are no more arguments from the east side residents saying, why isn't it on the west side? Well, now we've justified it. So I believe it was our decision that, we should pursue that.
Correct.
And what time, and for how much money, and how we're going to budget it.
Any residents?
And I wanted to also say that we were tasked with trying to with making a decision tonight, but we wanted to hold off because we wanted to hear from the residents. We wanted to get it out there, and let the firestorm happen. It's like let everyone criticize us or compliment us on what we're pursuing.
Good. Well, just go to the podium and give us your name and your street.
My name is Sarah Glasscock, and I live on North San Anselmo. I think when I first brought this to the council, my biggest concern was that living on the street that I live on, we're subject to tickets. And something that I don't see mentioned up there is that I believe, and I could be wrong about this, is that there's a 72-hour limit to parking citywide, meaning that if you have a trailer or a boat or a vehicle and you have it parked on your street and you live on Madison Avenue, you can leave your trailer parked out there for a year and not get ticketed. And if my husband's working on his truck and it's parked longer than the people that come by and ticket for street sweeping, our tires get marked up and we have to move our vehicle, or it gets towed. They'll actually tow vehicles off of the streets that are in my neighborhood. And the neighborhoods that are west of El Camino, they're not subject to that same 72-hour ordinance. And I like the idea about street sweeping, and I'm jumping subjects here. I like the idea about street sweeping because then there's the rationale of, yes, our streets are narrow on the east side, and those streets that are west of El Camino, they're also narrow. And so that makes sense. There's like a cohesive policy as far as that goes. The streets aren't getting cleaned in the area by San Bruno Park. And option 3 and especially option 4, I think are good ideas, as you had mentioned. But again, the whole 72-hour ordinance is not, I don't know if that's even part of the same argument. It's not. Okay. I guess that's all I have then.
Yeah, I think we have two situations here. One is the street sweeping, and it was interesting to read the staff report that was started 30 years ago, and why. And obviously, people now have larger families and a lot more cars, and so it probably wasn't as big of an issue then. The other issue, of course, and I'll let the city manager address it in more detail, is the 72-hour parking restriction. It does exist. And unfortunately, it's an enforcement issue, but we do have a lot of people that use that, have multiple cars on obviously right near St. Roberts is a really good example.
Right.
They park for 71 hours and they move their car and they park again. And it's a really tough situation to try to enforce. And I know the police department is on a lot of this, but it's a situation that, and I believe it's if I'm not mistaken, a Department of Motor Vehicle situation there too. But Connie, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I'll address that a little bit more completely. The 72-hour ordinance is in effect, and it is enforced, and I would say it's enforced equitably citywide. The mayor is absolutely correct that unfortunately there are a number of instances where our police department is effectively chasing those violations because we are required to post a notice of in advance of towing the vehicle under the 72-hour ordinance. So it gets to be a little bit of a if somebody is astute, shall we say, and is watching carefully, sometimes it can be difficult to, if the car is just moved, it could stay for another 72 hours. The only difference between the west side and the east side in the city related to parking is, in residential areas, is the parking restriction related to street sweeping. So in effect, what happens is that in those street sweeping restriction areas on the east side of town, there is effectively a limiting feature to the 72-hour ordinance. In other words, if the 72 hours that a vehicle would otherwise be parked overlaps with the street sweeping restriction, it is possible that your vehicle could not stand for the full 72 hours. But that's not because the 72-hour restriction is different. It's because of the parking restriction for street sweeping. So the two are different, and the 72-hour ordinance is enforced equally on both sides of town.
Okay. Anyone else from the public? All right. Discussion or action? Rico?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the Vice Mayor, I was on the subcommittee as well, and I'm one of those people on the east side that Ken feels sympathy for, who does move. We deal with moving the cars. You get very, very close knit neighbors when you start knocking on each other's door right before 8 o'clock to remind them if they've forgotten, overslept, or running a little late. I do feel that option 4 was something we brought up because I think it has been hard on those folks that they're working or trying to juggle their day, get the kids out, and what have you. And I think that extra hour does value and benefit them. And obviously, the objective of, I believe, of the city back 30 years ago was not to penalize, but to try to keep the streets clean of the vegetation and the debris. Not only because it goes into the sewer, which is critical for what we have to focus on, but it's also as far as the flooding. When the drain gets clogged and all of a sudden the drainage, and then we have the flooding, which is another issue. It was interesting when we were in the subcommittee about how much when you say you can pick up on the street when it is vacant of all cars versus going down the center. And the numbers that were given by Gino were staggering. So it works, it's proven, and a statistical data backs that up, that a clear street gets to be a clean street, and it prevents those things that, at least I believe, I'll speak from my street that I live on, would be affected if we did not have it. That was why I think we were suggesting going forward with option 4 for now. Option 3, though there is legitimacy in other areas that were identified in the staff report, it was also about reaching out and communicating, because obviously just to take action here and not say anything is not fair to others as well. You know, I've lived on the east and the west, and I know I have neighbors that believe it's a penalty, even in its perception, but they wouldn't ever want to see the street sweeping cease because of its value and its benefit. So I believe that the street sweeping needs to stay on the east side if it wants to be looked at in that area of option 3. And eventually we may find ourselves where it is required and mandated throughout this town to reach those levels that were indicated in the staff report. So that's kind of in a summary my thoughts.
And just to add on option 4, by extending extending that time 1 hour, it means that the commercial and industrial areas will now get street sweep every week instead of twice a month. So there is an added benefit there because the street sweeper now won't be in the residential area as early, but will be able to go through the commercial area before going into residential.
Also, I might add, was our plan included in alternative 4 that the parking lots parallel to San Mateo, they are cleaned once a week right now. Under this alternative, would be possible for us to clean those twice a week instead of once a week. And the city received reasonably high number of complaints about the cleanness of those.
Yeah. Any other discussion or action? Michael?
Through the chair, yeah, I was wondering, when the subcommittee was discussing this, was there any, is there an indication that the streets are basically clear during working hours, 9 to 5? Is that where the 9 o'clock came from? I'm assuming that the thought process was that by 9 o'clock the cars would be off the street anyway. But is there, is that really the case? Do the streets really clear out a little bit during the day? Or are people taking public transit and leaving their cars there?
Dude, I'll speak for where I live. I believe the 8 o'clock is hard for residents trying to. I'm just telling you my street, and the streets around me is just. There is a mad dash at times at 8 o'clock. You know, if by chance, you know, I'm not saying at 8:05 you get a ticket, but I think it was the extra hour was for the fact of people are usually gone with the kids to school, gone to work, begun their day. It gives them that latitude and a little bit of grace period in which to, if something should be running behind schedule, for example, that they're not having to run out to the street, somehow try to find a spot, get back into the house, and then try to get the things back. And now they might be not just across the street, but around the corner down the street, because that's all there is of parking. That is the 9 o'clock. On my area, I will say when I go around, minimally, I believe, yes, on the street sweeping days, the cars are moved, but it's also because there's probably got some good neighbors that look out for each other. Is what I've had. You too? You too? Okay.
Yeah, I'll come out at, no, I'm not using the microphone, but I'll come out at 8:10, and he's just passing by with the ticket, and I leave at 8:15. It's like that extra bit of time, and you've got kids in school, got a kid at Parkside, it just works out that way.
Okay.
Okay, good. Anything else? Thank you. Any action? Okay. Well,
I mean, I was it's all on you. I was hoping for more public comment, but I do believe that we should go forward with option 4, and that was our recommendation at the subcommittee level. Is we should probably get into some notification if if this council really wants to go into option 3 over on the west side. But if we go forward with option 4, I think it'll solve some issues, and also again the bonus is that the commercial area does get cleaned more often. So I'll make that motion that we approve alternative 4, modify the street sweeping program to enhance the route schedules, cleaning frequency, and sweeping times.
Second.
motion second. Any question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, staff has direction.
Through the chair,
Irene?
as we're working up the budget for the following year, can we ask that it be, that street sweeping for the west side be looked at and see how much we can do it? I live on one of the streets that is in red here, and I would be really excited to have my street cleaned and have the cars, I mean, I know it's clean, but have the cars move so it can really be cleaned. So we can do that.
Okay, and one more thing, how long will it take to implement this?
To implement alternative 4 will be possible for us to do in 2 months from now. and alternative 3 will be assessed at the time, how you suggested during the budget process, how long it takes to implement alternative 3.
Okay, great. And thank you very much for bringing it to our attention. So a lot of times, you know, it takes the input of the public to make some suggestions that aren't bad for everybody. You know, this is a good thing. Like I said, this was set up 30 years ago, probably in a totally different environment, and when in fact Irene can tell you when avenues were flooding and stuff like that. So we made a big improvement there with drainage and stuff, and this is part of it too. So thank you very much.
Just don't work on the car, on the truck in the street.
All right. Great. Item 10C, adopt a resolution accepting the San Bruno grade separation archway design concept.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, this item follows up on a study session that the City Council held approximately 1 month ago. The purpose of that study session was to provide the Council with a little bit additional opportunity to review and provide feedback and opinions about a gateway feature to be constructed as part of the San Bruno grade separation project, and specifically in the location of the overcrossing at San Bruno Avenue. The design team has faithfully followed through with hearing, understanding, and implementing the City Council's comments, guidance, and direction. And you have in front of you tonight the results of that analysis and the pictorial representation of your comments from the study session. Frank Fuller of the design team, Field Paoli, that design team is here tonight to walk through the design features with you, and his comments will be followed by Mark Simon of the Joint Powers Board, who has some information about preliminary costs for the project as it is going to be outlined to you tonight. The action in front of you is to consider and we hope concur and signal your approval or your additional comment on the design features so that we can move forward with additional detailed design and construction as part of the grade separation project.
Thank you, Connie. Mayor, members of the City Council, I'm very pleased to be here. I'm Frank Fuller, principal with Field Paoli Architects. And as you know, we had a large team of structural engineers, lighting engineers, producing a concept design, which is equivalent to about 15% out of 100% of design. So it's still in the concept stage. But it's been important over the last year to have met with the advisory committee, to have met with you, and to have met with the city staff to come up with what we now have as a concept design. So what I'm going to do is briefly tonight take you through some of the ideas that are included in the concept design, and then we can have discussion and questions, and Mark Simon will then talk briefly about the costs. So really what the archway is, as the committee has known for many years and working up to the point where we got started, is a gateway to town. And it's really on the east side of the grade separation project currently under construction. So as you approach from the east on San Bruno Avenue, it'll be right there. Now one of the key things is it has almost very small but almost no changes to the existing project of the grade separation, including all the shelters, railings, windscreen, everything that's part of the new station at the grade separation. There are changes we proposed to the elevator tower, which actually is right in the view corridor as you come along San Bruno Avenue, to replace the glass to make it of color from clear glass that complements the idea for the arch. There are also some changes proposed as part of the project for the plaza paving and a planter that's around the base of the stairs as you come down from the station, and also to liven up the underpass that's going to be there at San Bruno Avenue with paint both the vehicular underpass as well as the pedestrian underpass just to the north of where San Bruno Avenue goes underneath the grade separation. So this is roughly what it looks like as you're coming along San Bruno Avenue looking west. You can see the elevator tower on the right and the planter at its base. You can see we painted the underpass yellow. The arch is that dark green with the diagonal supports, and then in the middle there, in the middle of the diagonal supports from the arch down to the station is a medallion with San Bruno written on the medallion. And if we look at it from the plaza just to the north of San Bruno Avenue, we're looking at it really roughly from where the bridge going to the stairs passes overhead, and we're looking at the arch looking up toward the train. You can see that it's pulled away actually a little bit from the grade separation itself by about 5 or 6 feet. And then you can see how the supports and the walls underneath are painted that yellow color. You can also briefly see the medallion up there near the train. So we had a study session, public study session, on October 29th, and some of the things that we heard and that we modified because of that included the V or diagonal bracing that was preferred really as a support for the arch to better integrate those structural elements with the arch. We also made the arch taper at the top, so it starts off thicker at the bottom and then tapers as it gets to the top of the arch, which seemed to look more graceful to us and was suggested as well. And then we looked at the fact that when we had showed different ideas for coloration of the march itself, we had looked at some color gradations which changed from one color to another, and really the thought was that a single color, a dark green single color, was a good idea, and so that's what we included. And a couple more. We included the medallion, which sits right in the middle of the diagonal braces. We developed the idea of the ground supports being more substantive, as well as being high enough so that when you're on a bicycle or walking by, that it doesn't impinge as the arch starts off from either side of San Bruno Avenue. So those ground supports are larger and accommodate the arch, as well as finally the structural and lighting concepts were developed a little farther by our structural and lighting engineers. So if we even conceive of it in terms of what development could occur according to city plans that have been proposed, you can see looking down in an aerial view how the planter and the trees work with the elevator tower, how the arch sits relative to the station and the grade separation. Here we are again on the east side of San Bruno Avenue looking down at it, or at street level just to the south, again looking as we would see it, looking really from eye level up at the arch. Or if you're on the train platform, what it would look like there. Now actually it's separated, so as you look on the far right part of the screen where that shelter is, it's actually about 5 feet away from the shelter where that arch is passing by the platform. And here we are maybe looking from a window level about the same level as the platform, a little higher, looking down at the stair, the planter, the elevator on the right, and the arch. So several views just to get a feeling for what it's like. So let's talk a little bit about the materials that it's made of. I'm actually going to start with the bottom one, the structure, because what essentially this is a large steel beam, a wide flange beam, which supports from the concrete on either end. And then to that we add things. And that beam is about 1 foot by 18 inches big, and we add to it covers on either side. And that's the first thing there. And what it includes is frosted, internally colored acrylic. And that's covered by perforated metal cover panels, and it's on both sides of that beam. And then to connect that, there are connectors connecting it to the beam, which is the second bullet, and finally there are closure panels on either top and bottom, which then makes the whole thing like a light box. So at night, it can light up. So that's what the structure looks like, and I'm going to pass around something here, which are some of the material samples. Now you have to realize these are not exactly to scale, but these are, we have here the perforated metal, and the holes could be many different sizes, different shapes. We think round might be good, but it could be different patterns. And in order to get the dark green, what we've done here is picked a gray with a green, and then it will be frosted. So these are pieces of the sample which you can hold up to the light. So the scale of this and the color gives you a feel that actually the plastic, it will be about 3/8 of an inch, and then the perforated metal can be all different sizes. But the fact is that light passes through it. And so if we go to the lighting, when you look at something like this from a distance, these are just examples of what this kind of feeling could be. We're actually talking about green, but you can see from these examples how light passes through at night, because I mean, from certainly this time of year, when it's dark a good deal of the day, what this will appear as is a glow of color in an arch. And so the proposed lighting works such that there is LED lights. I mean, the LED is those light-emitting diodes, which we see now in car rear lights. We see them all over the place. They're very efficient. They're very long-lasting. They need to be replaced after, they can last for 50,000 hours. But they're a series of dots, essentially, of small diodes. And what they are is they're set inside along that beam, and they shine through this acrylic with the perforated metal. And so then we wanted to make a statement also about the external lighting, because we looked at several ways with a lighting designer of would it be possible to illuminate it with lights pointing at it from the outside. But since it's an arch and rather thin, and since there are train passengers, drivers, pedestrians all around it, it really was advised by our lighting consultant that that would be not a good idea. It would be much better just to keep it illuminated internally. And then also, finally, the medallion would be illuminated as well. So we have these cutout letters which say San Bruno, and the light from the inside shines through the letters as well with, again, LED lighting. So what you see is the arch and San Bruno lit whenever it was dark. And so that at least gives you a brief feel for the concept design, and we'd be glad to answer questions or proceed with Mark Simon first, whatever your pleasure. Thank you.
The susceptibility of ultraviolet on the plastic panels over a period of time.
From what we've heard from the plastic manufacturers, and the particular ones you're looking at are from E-Plastics in San Diego, but there are many manufacturers. They are, particularly with a perforated metal cover, they do not degenerate over time with ultraviolet light in any time period that we're going to probably be worried about. So we've been assured that that's not a problem.
Okay. Any other questions of Paoli?
Through the chair.
Irene?
Would the metal be dark green as well? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
I probably forgot to mention that, but when the metal is painted as well, so it will not be the silver color. It'll also be painted dark green.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Mr. Simon?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for your time tonight. Somebody has to present the bill. We have worked very hard to try and keep the costs down, but unfortunately, our preliminary estimate is that it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million to do this. We've been talking for quite some time with the city in an informal way about sharing the cost and how much we're going to do that. But you need to understand, the decision you make tonight doesn't commit you to $1 million, but there will be a decision at some point in which we have to figure out a funding agreement and how we're going to pay for this and how we're going to share that cost. We have some preliminary information that's categorical breakdown of the costs. We really weren't able to generate that information until we got to the point we're at with final design, or final concept, I should say. And I know that your city manager and I have talked about getting together very soon between staff of the city and staff with Caltrain to go over those costs, to walk through them, to understand where they are, to see where opportunities may exist or may not exist for reducing the cost, and then figuring out something that can approach the kind of funding agreement that the council would then have to be in a position to consider. So, as I said, somebody has to deliver the bill, and unfortunately it gets to be me.
Your preliminary estimate, does that include the work done to date?
I don't think it does. No, that's in addition to. That's essentially construction of the materials, labor and materials, and the construction of the archway, and then the associated soft costs with finalizing the design and those sorts of things. Issues I'm sure you're familiar with.
Okay. Any other questions of Mr. Simon?
Real
Rico?
quick, Mark, I kind of knew when you were going over to the mic that was going to be a question, but I thought I knew you'd offer that information first. So if the council were to go forward and adopt a resolution for the concept of this, but obviously, as you said, it doesn't obligate us to the economics of it, what is the timeline in which it's one of those things that you can not drive the car off the lot and take ownership?
That's a great question. The good news is the changes in design that the council sought, I believe there was an allusion to the idea that it's no longer specifically on the grade separation, it's simply attached to it. Because it doesn't impact directly in the same way the project construction schedule, we have a little more time. How much more time is one of the conversations we'll have to have with the city manager and with our staff. You are all familiar with Ashkelani and Raphael Bolin, who are managing this project. That's one of the issues we'll want to discuss. There are some finite times in terms of construction where we have to commit to some fundamental structural changes. Then you could do the archway later on. That may be one way of doing it, but those are issues I think we want to wrangle out with discuss and negotiate with the city staff before we bring you any final recommendation.
Okay. Irene?
I just want to say I really appreciate all the effort that you and your team have gone through to bring us back a different concept. I know when we started it was kind of we were butting heads about which way to go, but I think what you brought forward is it's more contemporary, yet it'll stand the test of time, and I think the color changes and the structural changes as far as the gradual thinning or of the archway and how you've seated it now really make a big difference. So I appreciate all that work.
Thank you for saying that. Mark Schatz, who you met with, the subcommittee met with him extensively, and then he was among those who met with the whole council in the study session, has led a team, including, of course, Frank, but led a team that really worked very hard on this. I think they fell in love with this project, and I know I'm delighted with it. I think it's really the kind of statement that I think we've understood the city would like to make about coming into San Bruno, and we hope that ultimately we can go forward with this and that you're proud of it.
Ken?
Yeah. I too am very proud of where we've gone with this, and believe me, we've gone all over with it, and appreciate all the input that the design team has had, and also our advisory team. It's an investment we got to make, and I'm not saying that we got to sign on to a blank check or whatever you propose to us, but we know it's not going to be free. So if this is what a gateway costs, then I think we need to move forward with it. I just said, and I pass on. I don't want to rain on the parade of this what beautiful design and everything, but I asked someone their opinion of what this looked like, and they go, "What does the W stand for?" And
wonderful.
So, and if that's the answer, then I wasn't quick enough to say. But I just hope that we don't have that question as the W arch is here in San Bruno. So I think I passed on my comments to Frank, and maybe it needs a little tweaking to get that, what in my opinion the stigma is on that.
The city manager mentioned that to me. Are any of you familiar with the old movie, It's a Mad, 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 Mad World?
Yes.
That's where the money was buried, was under the big W. So maybe you can start a lot of rumors about San Bruno.
We need some palm trees then, right?
Yeah, that's right. It was palm trees.
Thank you. As one of the members of the subcommittee, we put an awful lot of time, not near as much time as the design group did, but a lot of time. We went full circle from what I would consider fanciful designs all the way to something that's very practical. And I can remember, Mark, when we broke ground over there, you kind of smirked when I said there will be an arch. And
no, I was nodding and smiling in agreement.
Yeah, I bet you were, right. But we have come full circle, and it's been an awful lot of work, but I think it's come down to something that is great. It's really going to be nice, and I do want to commend the design team for putting up with a lot of frustrations as we go along, but that's all part of it, isn't it? Yeah, that's good stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions or comments or action by the council?
If you might, or if you'd like to, I'd like to introduce the resolution for adoption.
Vice Mayor Ibarra.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell. Mayor Ruane.
Aye.
Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you. Item 10D, adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with West Yost Associates to provide engineering services for the Trenton Drive Sewer Main Project in an amount not to exceed $179,066.
If you can.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you can see on the exhibit, the existing Trenton Drive sewer main is located in an easement behind the homes on the south side of Trenton Drive, uphill from San Bruno Avenue. This sewer main was constructed in the 1950s and in need of rehabilitation or replacement in order to reduce sanitary sewer overflows. The Trenton Sewer Project has been included as a priority project in the current draft sewer master plan. Between the year 2007 and 2010, the Trenton area had 8 instances of SSO, and 4 of the 8 were of the most serious Category 1 SSOs.
Explain SSO just for the public.
A SSO stands for Sanitary Sewer Overflows, the acronym. And this is a much higher average than the rest of the city neighborhood. Due to the steep terrain and heavy eucalyptus growth in the area, Trenton sewer main is inundated with root intrusion, which requires constant and extensive maintenance and repair work by city crews. Also, since 2006, city crews has conducted 11 repairs in the Trenton sewer area. To improve the efficiency in professional services contract procurement, the city issued a combined request for proposal, or RFP, for 2 projects, the Trenton sewer replacement and the Keynes to Angus sewer project. Details regarding the Keynes to Angus project will be presented in the next agenda item. In response to the RFP, the city received a total of 8 proposals and interviewed 6 of the top consultants. The interview panel consisted of city staff that include the project engineer, the city engineer, and the sewer division manager. Although the two projects shared a combined RFP, the consultants were selected separately for best fit for each project based on their work plan and approach, qualifications of the team members, innovation, and ability to meet project schedule. And each consultant was rated and given a point score by each of the members on the panel, and then the point score were averaged to determine the ranking. For the Trenton Sewer project, West Hughes was selected based on their innovative work plan and approach to reroute the sewer main from behind the homes to city right-of-way on Trenton Drive. This would eliminate the need to create an access road behind the homes and minimize impact to the environment and the neighborhood. In addition, West Hill's performance as the consultant to the city's water master plan was excellent in terms of their attention to details, follow-up on issues, and being on time and on budget. The first task for the consultant is to perform a feasibility study to evaluate the different alternatives for the project. And the final design alternative will be selected based on the impact to the neighborhood and the environment, community input, and construction cost. For the project schedule, staff estimate that the design would take approximately 9 months to complete, with an additional 1 year for the construction. And if awarded, it is anticipated that the project will be completed by summer of 2014. The Trenton Drive Sewer Main project is funded through the wastewater capital funds. In the original capital improvement program budget, the design cost was $120,000 compared to the proposed cost of $179,066. And the original construction estimate was $1 million plus $100,000 contingency in the original capital improvement budget. The revised construction estimate is $850,000 plus $137,000 contingency. It is expected that the additional cost for the design, which is $59,066, will result in savings during the construction of a less expensive alternative. And it is reasonable to anticipate that the project could still be completed within the estimated total project budget in the capital improvement program and also in the staff report. With that, I'm open to questions.
Any questions of staff? Ken?
So, I guess my question is that this engineer was selected, West Yost was selected because they had a different approach, that all the other proposals were to keep the sewer in the same, the sewer line in the same location on the hill?
That is correct, Councilmember Ibarra. The West Yost was the only consultant that proposed the rerouting the sewer lateral to the front on Trenton Drive and constructing a new main on Trenton Drive.
Many of us are used to having sewer mains in the street. Is there any explanation on why 60 years ago this was placed on the side of a hill, behind residences?
Yes. Well, if you're familiar with this neighborhood, the street elevation is actually higher than the back of the homes, and it goes downhill from there. And in those days, 60 years ago, I can only speculate that that would be the easiest way for the developer to put it right behind the home and run it down, and prior to this heavy eucalyptus growth. And of course, one consideration we have to take now is by moving the sewer main to the street, the new sewer main would have to be at a much deeper elevation in order for the sewer laterals to be rerouted from the back to connect to the new sewer. So that is one of the concern that we have.
I would like to add one comment that at this time it's not a given that the main will be relocated. But considering the proposal, it's worthwhile to assess which of those two alternatives will be better for the long term and minimizing impact to the residents, and also enabling the city to better manage that section of the sewer main in long term, depending how those two alternatives will come out, and also based on the resident input, how feasible those alternatives will be and what the cost will looks like. That's when that decision will be made.
And it's easy for me to look at a line drawing and say, well, okay, well then why not just put it in San Bruno Avenue? Then you've got gravity on your side, and you don't have to. Then you don't have to be within the trees.
The key will be how you can connect those homes to that main, and that will be the challenge.
Okay.
There is approximately 35 homes along that. 35 laterals would have to be relocated, and we will have to run very long laterals from the back of the home all the way down to San Bruno in order to meet the sewer main, the new main on San Bruno Avenue.
Okay.
And of course, that is still a possibility, but cost-wise,
you're the
preliminary, we
professionals.
do not think that it's a good option.
Any other questions of staff? Michael?
Through the chair, thank you. Can you provide a little more detail on how, if this does become the solution, the laterals are going to be redirected from the rear of the house to the front of the house?
Yes. I'd like to show. Westfields also, during the interview, presented a pamphlet of a project that they did for Yuba City, which is also rerouting the sewer main, relocating the sewer main from the back of the home to the front and rerouting the laterals. And the way they proposed is to use a directional boring between homes to run a lateral pipe to the back of the house and make the connection at the back. So there would be no interruption for service except the point that you need to connect the two pipes. In the meantime, while they're constructing this lateral to the back, the existing lateral will still discharge to the main behind the homes. So that is what they propose. Of course, this directional boring of the new lateral would be between the homes and not underneath the homes. And that's also one of our staff's concern.
But it would still require the ground to be opened up between each home to
no, it
run a
would
new
be a
lateral?
direction drilling. So it would go underground. Of course, it would require a maybe a right of entry or for work from the homeowners that consent. And then at the back of the home where the new pipe daylight, we would have to do a small excavation to connect the existing lateral to this new pipe that will come down to the front of the house. So there will be a small excavation there. But the installation for the length of the house will be done by directional boring.
It seems to me, and maybe I'm thinking about this too simplistically, but it would require some pretty extreme angles for pipes that are laid in the ground coming out of the house at one, in one direction, and you're talking about boring straight back, making a small connection, and then bringing it back 180 degrees in the opposite direction. And that to me seems like something that would cause issues with flow.
We definitely will look into the potential problem with running the sewer 180 degrees to the front, but it has been done before, and if done correctly, I believe staff believe that the hydraulic of the flow of sewage will not, the problem can be avoided by creating a nice, smooth turn for the connections, like a wider, a longer sweep and elbow, rather than using a very tight 90 degrees elbow. Those will all reduce the friction loss through the pipelines. So.
And certainly those details will be analyzed and assessed during this first phase of the design process.
Okay. Yeah, and I understand it's not absolutely the way we're going to go, but there is a concern that we're picking a more expensive design, or potentially a more expensive design, based on the potential of doing something. And my first thought in reading the description is that there's no way you can do that as cost efficiently as just tapping into existing laterals where they currently exist and just rebuilding the main in its current position. It sounds like you guys have done the research. Yuba City, you have the Yuba City example, and I'm sure there's some cost estimates there that you were using as your estimate. It just didn't seem as it seems hard to believe that you could do it as for the same price or comparable price, doing something that's so drastically different and with as little impact to the homeowners.
As I mentioned earlier, the final alternative selection would be also based on cost, and we'll look into the cost of replacing the pipe in place behind the homes. But in that scenario, there's a hidden cost also to remove these 100 feet tall eucalyptus tree, and a number of them, and also to create an access road over the entire alignment of the sewer that we currently do not have. That hidden cost can upset the cost to reroute these laterals to the front of up to the street.
And also is another cost beside the one-time investment, the ongoing maintenance costs to maintain a sewer main in the right-of-way versus maintaining in a very harsh terrain and with very high ongoing maintenance cost. That will be included in the cost of the assessment.
Okay. And where the current sewer line runs, is there an easement there for other utilities? Does PG&E or anyone else have lines running back there?
During the site visit, I observed an overhead PG&E line, but not directly over. It crosses the easement at a point.
It crosses it.
Yeah, but it wasn't running directly over the easement. I
Okay.
believe that easement was primarily for the sewer easement.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Chair. I know, as the mayor asked to quantify what an SSO was, when we say it's the more serious Category 1, can you, or the director, clarify Category 1?
Category 1 is considered more serious SSO, which is above the discharge of 1,000 gallons, or that the overflow sewage could not be recovered from a storm drain. And that's what's considered as a Category 1.
Okay, thank you. This is just on, myself, something have thought of, and somebody else has brought it up too, but I know in all of our language we have here, these projects are an amount not to exceed X dollars. And always, I don't know if there's better, that lawyers can come up with better verbiage, but these not to exceed always gives me this impression that that's where your plateau is, meaning that they can go right up to that, and obviously if there's a change order, it's going to exceed that. And again, this is just a little food for thought for future, but it's the mindset of how I see it, read it, and how some may interpret that.
Only just for clarification, the design contract is different than the construction contract. If you say up to design contract, staff has no authority to issue change order without to the design contract without additional authorization from you.
Okay, so that's a customary verbiage that we use all the time. Not to exceed, not to exceed, not to exceed.
But that's the reason, probably historically, that's the distinction between a design contract versus a construction contract.
In our construction, we don't use that verbiage then?
For the construction contract, you have the contingency, and basically you can exceed the construction contract with the contingency amount. Here, in the case of the construction contract, is not for design contract is not the case.
If I might, I think the council member makes an excellent point, and that is that in a fixed price contract where contingency is not an issue, then it is not actually a not to exceed amount, and we will omit that from future contract award agenda items. The director is correct, though, on construction contracts, our intent in using the not to exceed language is to make sure that the total appropriation amount or the total amount being authorized by the city council is not exceeded. That includes both the actual construction contract cost as well as the contingency. If you authorize the full amount as $1 value, then in essence you have created a situation where there's an assumption perhaps that that full amount will be spent. So the not to exceed language is actually intended to avoid that presumption where it relates to a contingency for a construction contract.
Thank you. And we talked about the eucalyptus trees and obviously the height and the challenge that could have. And I would perceive that over the period of time the city has done maybe nominal vegetation removal or what have you as in most of the canyon. I mean, we can't go in and take care of all of that. Are there any other issues or concerns that we're going to have other than obviously if we went to remove it, that exorbitant cost? But as far as with this project going forward and the vegetation that we have that exists, is there going to be any concern or problem, or other than if we remove the pipe, is there anything else we need to be concerned about with this?
Nothing known, any additional concern known at this time.
The key here is that if we approve this, we will have a design. We will have a professional engineering company provide us with the design for that price. And on the other side of the coin, these companies had to look at this complex project, determine what it was going to take for them to come up with the design. One company came up with something, figured that it's going to cost them $250,000 to do it. This company is saying $179,000 to do it. And there's still a lot of unknowns. You've made it very clear, Wing has made it very clear that there are some very complex issues here that are dealing with not only the terrain, the trees, but also the residents. Yeah,
Correct.
the properties. So I think we're getting our money's worth on this one, you know. And if the project is under $1 million, I think it's considering the consequences of, you know, a pretty critical SSO area. I think it's something we have to do.
Mr. Rico?
Robert Rico, 7th Avenue. Just a quick question. I did read the agenda packet. Assuming you move the new sewer line to in the middle of the street, are there costs involved to do something with the part that's green on the map now? Are you going to plug it, or are you going to cave it in, or is it going to stay there with no added cost to the city? Thank you.
Did you hear that question?
Yes, the abandonment of the existing line will be included in the cost of the alternative to relocate to the street at that time.
Okay. I agree with the Vice Mayor. The bigger question for me is a lot of these costs, I don't want to minimize them, but are very small compared to the problem we have with SSOs and the problem that we have with the groups like the Baykeepers and things going down the road, many millions of dollars. And we made a very aggressive effort as this council with some of our rates recently to get a lot of this stuff taken care of, and I think this is a good start here, a good step. Any other discussion or action?
I'll introduce the resolution.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Ibarra.
Aye.
And then
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Item 10E, adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Bellecci and Associates to provide engineering services for the Canes to Angus sewer bypass project in an amount not to exceed $139,855.
And as you can see on the exhibit, the sewer main on Keynes Avenue via San Mateo Avenue to Angus Avenue, it is a capacity deficient pipeline due to insufficient slope and size. This pipe is also in poor condition due to its age. This section of sewer main is the last remaining capacity deficient improvement project that was recommended in the 2000 sewer master plan. The project was originally included in the fiscal year 03 to 04 capital improvement program, but was later deferred in order to coordinate with the Caltrain grade separation project schedule. Historically, this sewer main has experienced numerous sanitary sewer overflows, including 2 SSOs in 2011 at the intersection of Keynes and Masson. In order to coordinate with the Caltrain grade separation project, the Keynes sewer project has been divided into 3 separate sections. For the first section, the grade separation constructed approximately 1,000 feet of 18-inch diameter pipe on Huntington Avenue, and also about 200 feet of 24-inch diameter pipe under the railroad track along Angus. This work was funded by the Great Separation Project since the alignment of the sewer main is within the footprint of the Great Separation Project. This work was completed in April 2012. To coordinate with the Great Separation construction project through Posey Park, the city accelerated the second section of the project and constructed a 180-foot section of 15-inch diameter pipe from the last manhole at Keynes Avenue to the new sewer main on Huntington. And this work was completed in July 2012. Now, this agenda item is for the design of the third and final phase of the Keynes to Angus sewer project. And this final phase includes approximately 1,000 feet of sewer main along Keynes between Hensley and San Mateo Avenue, 600 feet of new sewer main on San Mateo Avenue between Keynes and Angus, and 300 feet of sewer main on Huntington south of San Bruno Avenue. As mentioned earlier, we had a combined RFP for the Trenton sewer project and the Keynes sewer bypass project. And for the Keynes sewer project, Bellecci and Associates was selected as the most qualified and best fit consultant. Bellecci provided an excellent presentation by each one of the team members during the interview, and the technical qualification of the team members were also exemplary. In addition, Bellecci has completed many sewer replacement projects of similar complexity in the Bay Area and with congested underground utilities conditions similar to the San Bruno downtown neighborhood. For the project schedule, staff estimate that the design would take approximately 6 months to complete with an additional 9 months for the construction. And if awarded, the project could be completed by April of 2014. For fiscal impact, the estimated design cost for the development of the CIP budget was $245,000. And the proposed this consulting contract is $139,855. The original design cost estimate was the more conservative estimate due to the expected difficulties in working with existing utilities in a congested downtown area. The construction cost estimate for this project is $737,000 plus $102,000 contingency. Also, staff would like to report in the 13th error in the staff report that the available project funds for this project are $1,358,580. The total available funds for the Phase 3 project should have been reduced by the cost of the Phase 2 construction, which was $130,000. And the correct amount available should be $1,228,249. The total project estimate, including design, construction, contingency, staff management, and inspection, is $1,131,855, which is within the available funds. And with that, I'm open to questions.
Any questions of staff? Rico?
Mine, really quick. So the thing I just was wondering and comes up is that the sewer and stormwater work, in the end, will this meet the need of what we need, or will it still, could it be an undersized pipe that we could still find ourselves having, you know, some backup for sewage problem?
The entire sewer system after the implementation of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, the pipe size will increase. The pipe slope will also be increased. For example, on Huntington, that pipe was originally a 10-inch pipe, and we put it in different alignment with deeper slope into an 18-inch pipe. The sewer pipe crossing Posey Park, there wasn't a pipe there before, and the pipe was pretty much flowing flat down Cemetery Avenue through Artichoke Joe parking lot onto Angus. So now we actually created a bypass by building that 150 feet of bypass sewer at a 15-inch pipe at a much higher slope. And also with the deeper slope here, we provide an opportunity for the new sewer on Keynes and on Cemetery flowing north to tie in at a much deeper elevation, which will provide the adequate slope and size to take away the flow for this, transmit the flow in this neighborhood.
To specifically respond to your question, this project is the last capacity improvement project identified in our existing master plan. The reason why this capacity-related project was postponed due to the Great Separation Project timing. The draft sewer master plan update, which is in a draft form and wasn't approved yet and wasn't discussed with you yet, identifies additional capacity-related issues in our system unknown to us before the update of the sewer master plan. And you will have that further presentation at the time when the updated sewer master plan will be discussed.
Through Chair, I'm just curious. We're talking two different projects. You went out to RFP for this project and the Trenton project. You had them all over the place, and you had eight of the same companies bidding. I'm just curious. Was West Yost not even? You know, they were clearly not as qualified to do this project as Belici. I mean, I'm just trying to get an idea of why wouldn't it be easy to work with the same company on, you know, and you basically give the same reasons why you selected each of them because they have experience, and I mean, but is this one just a little more different that, you know, that West Yost, you know, probably wouldn't have been able to do it as well?
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, the selection criteria were work plan and approach, qualification of the team members, innovation, and ability to meet project schedule. And then each member of the selection board will rate the consultant, their presentation, their past experience, and rate it on a score sheet. And based on the score sheet, the scores will be averaged among the member of the selection board. And based on those scores, it agrees with our impression of the consultant that this indeed was the most suitable, best fit for the project. I mean, Belici to Keynes and West Yost by their innovative proposal to the Trenton Sewer project.
to also address your question in long term, based on our work with our legal department, our intent will be, like for the water main replacement projects, to go out and to seek proposal for on-call consultant for water main replacement, and to select one or two consultant which would support us to design all of the main replacement water in our water system without the need to go out each time and to solicit proposal for water main replacement projects.
Well, it seems complicated. It seems that, and I don't believe we've been privy to the scoring system before. But again, it's for design services. It's not for construction services where you'd have to go with the lowest bid, the lowest responsible bid. So it was I was just curious because, in the other project, the other contractor was possibly more expensive, and then here, this contractor is more expensive than the one you hired for the other one. And it may even be a staff issue too, or you got one company working hard on one project and another company working hard on the other project for timing. So
yes.
Okay.
Mr. Rico.
Robert Rico, 7th Avenue, excuse me, down in the eastern edge of the Bel Air. I'm concerned a little bit in that the report tonight says that the Angus sewer pipe was increased meaningfully in diameter, as is the Huntington, the purple on the map that doglegs and connects into Angus. I'm assuming that works its way down and connects into 7th Avenue and goes to the South San Francisco sewage treatment plant. So are you moving less sanitary overflows from the business district because you've got big pipes that's going to let the sewage move there, and you are having a choke point or smaller pipes in the Bel Air from 1st to 7th Avenue that could potentially be overflowed because of the amount that excuse me, the amount that you're trying to now pump into smaller diameter pipes, or is the Angus section oversized and it will be able to handle the projected increase? Thank you.
Wayne?
Yeah, I can answer that one.
Speak into the mic, Wayne. Thank you.
In all general sewer construction, the procedure is to construct from downstream up. And so that this is to have a larger diameter pipe downstream, and by the time you get to the upstream, the sewage will have somewhere to go. So in this case, the 7th Avenue sewer main was increased in the year 2002 to a size of 36-inch diameter. And then the Angus sewer between 7th Avenue and 1st Avenue was increased to 27-inch diameter. So with this new 18-inch and 24-inch section underneath the railroad track, it will only allow the smooth transmission of sewage going to the 7th Avenue and eventually going to South City. So the capacity is there downstream already. There will not be a problem.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion or action?
Get to it. I'll introduce the resolution.
Vice Mayor Ibarra.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Item 10F, receive first quarter financial update report as of September 30th, 2012, and adopt the resolution amending the fiscal year 2012-13 operating budget to reappropriate 2011-12 carryover encumbrances. you're on.
It's time to talk numbers and purchase orders, so hopefully everyone's had their caffeine this evening. Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, the purpose of my presentation tonight is twofold. The first is to provide the first quarter financial update report for the 2012-13 fiscal year, and the second is to describe the action that is being requested of the Council this evening as presented in the resolution before you. I will begin by going into the first quarter financial update report. Starting with the general fund. Due to the timing of the receipt of many of the city's revenues, the first quarter revenues are expected and have historically proven to be around the 14% benchmark in total at the end of the first quarter. This is primarily due to the receipt of many of the major city revenues, including property tax and vehicle license fees, coming in installments, beginning with the December installment and then later in April. In addition, many of the major taxes, such as sales tax and transient occupancy tax, tend to lag a month, and so we have only received, as of September 30th, 2 months rather than 3 months of some of those revenues. So therefore, we're not near the 25% mark, and actually the 16% mark that we see at the bottom line is slightly above the historical 14% that I mentioned. Some notable items in the general fund revenues that we've noticed as of the first quarter. One thing you might notice is sales tax dollar-wise compared to last year's first quarter results is actually down. That is not a result, it's not an indicator that sales tax in general is down. It's really just the result of a timing difference in the receipt of payments. So we received one extra payment last year that we did not receive this year. All indications are that sales tax is where we targeted and where we budgeted at, so there's nothing to be concerned about with that number. You'll see that the charges for services and use of money and property, the dollar amounts year to date, are less than what we received last year. These two categories were affected by the loss of redevelopment. The charges for services was a category where we used to have money coming in from the redevelopment agency to recover cost of general administration costs spent working on redevelopment. So the budgets were reduced accordingly, and same with use of money and property. We historically received an interest payment on the outstanding city advances in this category, which has been put on hold or reduced at this point in time. So that's the explanation for the decline in those two categories. Finally, a positive note, the hotel motel occupancy tax, the TOT, if you'll look, this number only reflects 2 months of the fiscal year, the 455, and it is actually 20% above the number for the first 2 months of last year. So last year, TOT was performed very well, and it appears that it's not only just continuing to perform well, but actually increasing this year. Moving on to the expenditures, as you would anticipate, at the first quarter, expenditures tend to run around the 25% mark. At the bottom line for the general fund, expenditures are at the 23% of budget mark, which is the same as where they were last year. And as you look at all the departments, they all tend to be in the 25% range with the exception of recreation, and that's the result of the fact that much of recreation's part-time budgeted salaries are spent at the beginning of the year during the busy summer season, so we tend to see higher percentages in that department during the first quarter. However, all other budgets indicate that the departments are working well within their budgets. Moving on to the enterprise funds, starting with the revenue, the water revenue is at 29% of budget, and I'd just like to point out that this number includes 1 month of the rate increase that was approved by City Council for 2012, so that rate increase went into effect in September, so this does reflect 1 month. Same with wastewater as well, that does reflect the 1 month. Going back to water for just a moment, the revenues tend to be slightly higher than 25% during the first quarter, given that it covers summer months where water use tends to be higher, and then it drops off during the winter months and sort of catches up to normal. On the cable side, cable revenues are at 24% of budget, so trending well for the year. However, total revenues in cable are 6% below the number that we had received as of the first quarter last year. And finally, on stormwater, not much to discuss on the revenue side. Stormwater fees are collected on the property tax bill, so we will anticipate receiving the first installment in December. And really nothing notable on the expenditure side. All the expenditures in the enterprise fund departments are below the 25% mark and well within their budgets. Moving on to internal service funds, these are the departments that exist to serve other city departments, and they are funded entirely through allocations from other city funds. So that's why it looks very nice and consistent that 25% of the revenues have been achieved in all these departments, because they are simply transfers from other funds in accordance with the budget. On the expenditure side, we have seen that most departments are within the 25% range. However, the very notable variation that you'll see is in the self-insurance fund, and that is the result of the unanticipated increase of the city's liability insurance premium for the 2012-13 fiscal year. Actually increased by more than 33%, and that is reflected in that figure. This concludes the first portion of the presentation on the financial update. I'd be happy to answer any questions on this before moving on.
Any idea what the cost is of that 33% increase in liability?
It amounted to about a $130,000 increase.
I mean, the reason for it.
Well, it was primarily, I don't know if you want to address this, Mark, but it was driven primarily by claims in the enterprise funds, but I'll let Mark explain.
Right. We look at those things fairly carefully, and almost all of that increase was a result of the claims that we sustained as a result of water and wastewater overflows as a result of our aging infrastructure. That was the bulk of it. We did just confirm earlier today that none of the increase was due to any activities arising out of the Glenview incident. So none of those things affected any of our insurance premiums.
Okay, thank you.
So moving on to the second portion of tonight's presentation is purchase orders. The city uses purchase orders to earmark or encumber budgeted funds for the purchase of major equipment or significant dollar amount, contractual agreements of significant dollar amounts in the budget. Oftentimes, these major purchases or agreements will span the course of more than one fiscal year. And since operating budgets do not carry forward, the funds don't carry forward from one year to the next on their own, we use purchase orders to encumber and earmark those funds from a previous budget and carry them forward to the next fiscal year to ensure that the funds are available to complete the purchase or complete a project as planned. At the end of the 11-12 fiscal year, a total of $942,000 of outstanding purchase orders remained in the operating budget, with nearly 50% of this amount as a result of one single purchase order, which is the outstanding purchase of the Vector that at the end of the fiscal year. The individual purchase orders were listed and described in the attachment to the resolution and are summarized by fund and dollar amount in this slide. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the purchase orders. That concludes my presentation.
Good. Any questions for Kim? Any action by the council?
I'll introduce the resolution.
Vice Mayor Admira.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell. Aye. Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Item 10G, adopt a resolution authorizing the making of a prepayment under the water supply agreement with the City and County of San Francisco through the issuance of revenue bonds by the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. The Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency, referred to as BOSCA, represents the interests of 24 cities and water districts, along with 2 private utilities that purchase water wholesale from the San Francisco Regional Water System, pursuant to the water supply agreement in 2009. One of the activities of BOSCA that BOSCA participates in is negotiating wholesale water rates and identifying ways to keep those rates low. One of the factors built into those rates into the wholesale water rates paid to San Francisco are costs for capital improvements. Many of the seismic improvements that we have seen up and down the peninsula to the water system were incurred by San Francisco and are paid as part of our wholesale water rates. At this time, the capital debt that BOSCA member agencies owe San Francisco totals just over $367 million in total, which is paid to San Francisco at an interest rate of 5.13%. Over the course of the last fiscal year, BOSCA has been exploring the feasibility of issuing revenue bonds to prepay this capital debt to the agencies, to San Francisco on behalf of the agencies at a lower rate of interest than is currently being paid. It has been determined that issuing debt is feasible and would result in approximately $20 to $34 million in savings for all member agencies over the 21.5-year term of the bonds. The actual savings by agency is difficult to estimate given that they are a function of water purchases in a given year. So at the time they can provide estimates, but the actual savings will vary year to year depending on the amount of water purchased by an agency. At this time, the savings that San Bruno is estimated to receive as a result of this prepayment range from $276,000 to $469,000. Obviously a very big range, varies on a number of factors including the water purchases and also the market, how the market responds to this issuance. The annual present value savings would range somewhere in the $12,000 to $21,000. The issuance of these bonds would be by BOSCA. They would not be a debt issuance of the city. The city, if they choose to participate, would continue to pay this as part of the wholesale water rates as an operating cost, so it would not be a debt of San Bruno. The resolution before you this evening would just certify that San Bruno wishes to participate in this prepayment and authorizes the city manager and myself to participate with BOSCA and to ensure that the city provides all the necessary information to see this through.
Irene?
Thank you. I'd like to make just two clarifications. The money that we are prepaying off the debt is not money that paid for the capital improvements that are going on now. These are capital improvements that occurred in the past, and it's a debt that we have now. So we are paying that debt off at 5.13%. So if we decide not to do this, we would still have to pay that debt off at 5.13%. So that's that part. The seismic improvements that are going on right now, that bill hasn't come to us yet, and it's huge. So just to give everyone a heads up, this is a separate debt that we've already incurred in the past, and the other debts will be coming to us. So.
Any other questions of staff?
No.
All right. Action by the council.
I'll introduce the resolution.
Councilmember O'Connell?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Ibarra?
Aye.
Mayor Ruane?
Aye. And finally, 10H, adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Whitley Burkett and Associates Incorporated to provide engineering services for the dry weather flow monitor at 7th Avenue project in an amount not to exceed $95,400.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and member of the City Council. On behalf of Public Services, I will be presenting to you a staff report and request an authorization for the city manager to execute a contract for professional services with Whitley Burkett Associates for the dry weather monitoring, flow monitoring for 7th Avenue and Tanforan in the amount of not to exceed $95,400. San Bruno has a joint ownership with South San Francisco for the water quality control plant located in South San Francisco. The San Bruno wastewater flows into that plant through two major lines, the 7th Avenue and the Tanforan, and measured historically by flow meters. In 2002, construction project to increase the capacity of the 7th Avenue line took place by upsizing the existing size from 24-inch to 36-inch. Shortly after the construction, irregularity in the flow measurements were noticed. Initial investigation of the staff revealed that the solid waste and debris been accumulated within certain sections in the pipe. With time, the solid piled up higher. Consequently, the water level became at a higher level, which the bottom line resulting in inaccurate measure but overblown numbers. Now, the city shares the cost estimate to operate the plant with South City, largely on the flow, the total flow into the plant. Now, currently, the city of San Bruno pays based on estimate of the total flow at Shaw Road Pump Station after deducting the portion of the South San Francisco flow. Staff believes that it is important for San Bruno to have an accurate reading, one. Two, it will enable the city to effectiveness, reducing the rainwater inflow and infiltration into the sewer system. In 2010, City Council adopted a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Whitley Perchette to investigate, study, and evaluate the situation and develop a plan, technical plan, to accurately metering the issue for the city. The investigation, actually 2 reports came back with findings and alternatives. The 7th Avenue line, the existing of a high point downstream of the existing flow meter at 7th Avenue was confirmed. The high point caused a backflow and submergence of the existing flow meter, which resulting in an inaccurate flow measurements. Alternatives with cost estimates were provided with recommendation of the lowest cost to replace segments of the pipe and to replace the existing flow meter but install it at a higher level. Both will take care of the backup and the reading respectively. As for the Tanforan, the finding was that the existing appears to work perfectly and the readings is an accurate reading. The recommendation was not to do anything, leave it as is. However, it was reported that there is a side stream bypass the meter at Tanforan. If we look at it, the existing meter is the one that you see in green. So staff proposed to install another meter downstream to capture that side stream, although it's a small amount, but at least we have an accurate measure instead of estimating it. So in the best interest to the city, staff recommends retaining Whitley Perchette to provide their professional expertise and services based on the facts. They're very familiar with the situation and the problem. And most importantly, the city will hold them responsible for both the recommendation as well as the implementation of those recommendations. The expected construction completion of the project the end of 2013. This project is an approved project in the CIP for fiscal year 12-13 with a total budget of $350,000 funded from the wastewater. The contract with Whitley Pershed, the proposed contract with Whitley Pershed, consists of $95,000 in total. The breakdown of that, about $48,000 is in design and survey services, $18,000 in geotechnical services that they will be hiring a sub-consultant for them, and $28,000 approximately in the construction support during construction. Again, we're requesting an authorization for the city manager to execute a contract in the amount of $95,400. Should council chooses not to go or favor the recommendation, we have several alternatives, 3 alternatives outlined in the report that you may consider, or any other viable alternative that you may see. With that, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of staff? Or action by the council?
Oh, excuse me.
Irene?
I have a question or a comment. So the difficulty or the problem was caused because the line is now bigger and the flow changed because the line accumulated silt? Is that?
Okay.
And thus pushed up the water level and the flow and all those things. What I'm getting back to is, are we going to how are we going to avoid the similar problems to the other new lines that we're proposing to put in, that we just approved putting in? I mean, is that kind of problem going to happen again somewhere else, or is this just like the one time and the one place that it would occur?
The investigation did not, the reason you would have a high point, 2 reasons that we can think of. One is settlement happened after construction, or it was constructed with an offset alignment and was unforeseen for the staff. They oversee it when it was done in 2002. However, in the entire investigation and the study that they did, there was no concrete evidence to one or the other. There was no cracks or separation in the manhole, but also they don't know whether it was installed. So the meter comes like this and there is one up. So it overflows. Once it submerges, then the meter just reads whatever numbers, which is not the true value that it goes through.
Okay.
Preventively also, the department can address this concern in the future to use the best specification and design inspection during construction to minimize any potential for further problems on any of new section of our system.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, with just one last point. The short answer, my opinion, it's just one time. It's just for this project. It's not a continuous thing.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Michael?
Through the chair. So just to clarify, the $350,000 is going to address the issue with silt building up there. It's not just the metering. You're going to solve the problem with whatever misalignment or whatever is happening there.
Yes, the $300,000 consists of the $95,000 that we're requesting tonight for the design and the construction support by Whitley Burchett, the construction estimate of about $173,000+, contingency of about $25,000, and we estimated that the staff time throughout the design, the inspection, and the construction and the closeout to be about 55. That's how the $350,000 was established or came up with.
Okay. And one last question. How much do we estimate that we are overpaying South San Francisco based on historical numbers per year?
It is our assumption that it's very hard to say. That estimate was developed based on the historical information. Is our assumption at this time that how much the city paid during this time is very close to the flow itself. It's hard to know. After this new flow meter will be installed, then the result will tell us exactly. Based on our best estimate, the city was paying pretty close to how much paid, but still, after the flow measurement, the conclusion can be that the city will pay even maybe slightly higher than how much pays now, or lower. Can go either ways. Nobody can guarantee, but based on our best estimate, it's very close.
If I may elaborate on that one. Well, I lived in the Bay Area for 30 years. South City typically has more cold weather and rain than San Bruno. By having the flow meters there, which is the most important and the crucial point of it is to measure the rain water that goes into the system. So that could be substantially high or low. Depends when do you look at it, what year, what time. So, but in staff's opinion, it will reduce the shares of San Bruno.
Okay, I'm going to hold you to it.
Any other questions or action by the council?
Introduce resolution.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Ibarra.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Item number 11, report of commissions, boards, and committees. We don't have any reports this evening. Item 12, comments from council members. The first comment will be from Councilmember O'Connell. Receive oral report from Councilmember O'Connell on her attendance at the National Pipeline Safety Trust Annual Conference, November 7th to the 8th, 2012 in New Orleans.
Thank you. I was just looking at my notes and I was scribbling them all over the place. First of all, I'd like people to understand that this conference consists of three types of participants and audience. The first are pipeline operators, the next are pipeline safety regulators, and then the last are citizens, elected officials who have been affected by some kind of pipeline disaster in one way or another. The theme for this year was Trust but Verify, and all the presentations centered around that theme. However, the keynote speaker was Director Rosenkind from the National Transportation Safety Board, and he emphasized trust and verify. So no matter who tells what, you should trust that they are doing it, but verify that they actually have. So that was an interesting take on it. Also to let people know, San Bruno, our personal involvement and people's use of San Bruno's pipeline disaster and lessons learned from that is very prominent. I think every single, except maybe one, presentation was centered or had something to do with our own disaster. And so what we do now and continuously going forward, or what we has done, is very much in the limelight for all these people. It's an important thing that we, I believe, continue to participate, at least even, be members there. I know I'm kind of stumbling because I was trying to figure out what the best way to say this was. It's a platform for people who have experienced disasters to listen to what the pipeline regulators and pipeline operators are doing, and to make sure that their needs are being addressed in some manner. And if they're not, the people there who were had been affected by the disaster were very vocal and organized and articulate about what they needed and wanted to have done. So I was very appreciative of the efforts everyone there made, and I think we should continue participating.
Thank you. And I believe going forward we'll be a much larger contributor, at least with our experience and our expertise that we've developed over the last 2.5 years with the Pipeline Safety Trust Group. So we look forward to working with them closer. Also, I'd like to make an announcement that our holiday tree lighting will be December 6th, a week from Thursday at 5:30, right in front of the War Memorial Recreation Center, and everyone is invited to attend. It's a lot of fun, and there's caroling and refreshments, and Santa even comes in a fire truck. So we look forward to that. Item number 13, go into closed session. We're going to have a conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, agency designated representative, city manager, human resources director, finance director, Jeff Rothman, negotiator, employee organizations, and public safety mid-management. Prior to adjournment, I would like to close this meeting in memory of a few people. First of all, I think we all know Mr. Ed McGovern, who was very active in San Mateo County issues, if you will, not just politics. And he recently lost his father, who was a very prominent individual in San Francisco and actually in the peninsula too. So I'd like to offer my condolences to the McGovern family. Also, last Friday there was a very horrific crash on Highway 101 that took the lives of 2 sisters in the Tandell family, residents of San Bruno. So I'd like you all to please join me in a moment of silence for all those individuals. Thank you. And this meeting will adjourn to our next regular City Council meeting, be held right here December 11th, 2012 at the Senior Center.